All right. Hey, my friends, and welcome to today's episode where we're going to talk about shifting identity and belief and why this can be a very powerful path for transformation and recovery from things like OCD, anxiety, and the stress related disorders that form that loop that we get stuck in. And so, before we dive in, real quick, if you don't know me, my name is Matt Codde, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of Restored Minds. And I wanted to let you know that I have a new free guide available on my site at restoredminds.com, or you have a link right down in the notes where we can give you access. And again, it really is going to break down this stress and anxiety loop and how it forms and really what you need to do to break out of it. And so, make sure to download that if you haven't already. Also, we have a free newsletter called the Feel Better Letter that you'll get access to, where I send out exclusive content weekly, again, totally free. So please claim access and register today. So let's go ahead and dive in. So shifting identity and shifting belief, and how does that actually help with OCD and anxiety? And also that's this implication that there's these identities and beliefs that are actually at the root of OCD and anxiety to begin with, and which I would absolutely agree with. And that's part of in TBC. We not only talk about breaking the loop and really removing the behaviors, but breaking the loop and also changing the beliefs and identities that are really at the cause and the source of a lot of this loop forming. So I'm going to use a bridge here, and I thought of it when I was driving, and I just thought it was such a powerful bridge if you really understand this. So for those of you that have seen the show Game of Thrones, one of the popular characters in the show is Tyrion Lannister, and he's played by Peter. I can't remember the actor's name. I think like Drinkage, but I can't. I'm sorry if I'm not stating that name correctly, but he's an actor, and he is one of the main leads of Game of Thrones, the real popular series. And Tyrion Lannister says throughout the show this idea that a Lannister always pays his debts, and so wherever he owes money, he always pays the money. And this is an interesting concept because notice what's going on. He has this motto that he lives by, and a lot of people think it's like just stated, but it really is an identity and a belief structure that drives this repetitive behavioral pattern, right? So if he has this motto that he's been living by, that a Lannister, right? So he identifies as part of the Lannister family. You'd be like, he was born into it and all this stuff, but he was, and he is technically part of that family, but he doesn't have to actually claim that identity. A lot of people are born into families and remove themselves from it, right? And identity is something you choose to embrace either consciously or subconsciously, right? So you identify as something. And then there's this belief that a Lannister always pays their debts, right? So anytime he has a debt, he pays it off because his identity as a Lannister comes with this belief that a Lannister always pays their debts. So his behavior naturally follows that he always pays debts that he may hold or that come upon him. So, and throughout the show, he repeats that continuously, right? And it's just like a Lannister always pays his debts. And you start to see that this is actually a lot of what drives our behavior. Is that if we have certain identities and certain beliefs that and these are things that we just assume to be true, right? So we don't even necessarily have a conscious perspective of them that they're an identity or belief. We just assume that they're true, right? It's just like when you have a pair of sunglasses on and you don't realize you have sunglasses, you just assume like this is how the world looks, right? Or when you take just regular glasses off or whatever it is, right? The assumption is what makes it a identity and belief, because there's an unawareness that it's even an identity or belief to begin with. An identity is a belief about who you are. A belief is more of a story about how things are, if you will, to just separate them. And identity usually preludes beliefs. So when you understand that that drives certain emotional convictions, which then leads to certain behavioral patterns, or thought patterns and then behaviors, you understand that the OCD and anxiety loop forms off certain identity constructs and belief structures. So for instance, if you have an inherent belief, right, that like when we talk about scrupulosity, and scrupulosity is a formation of OCD, right? Just to kind of parallel this, if you talk about scrupulosity, you say, okay, well, how does scrupulosity form? Well, first, you have to be someone who identifies as someone who believes in a higher power, right? Because the idea of fearing, offending a higher power, you'd have to first believe in the higher power to begin with. or the possibility of that. And so you have this identity of I'm a God believing or God fearing person. Even God fearing is a great identity and belief, because it's this presupposition that you should fear God to begin with, right? So you have this identity, and then the belief, and then the fear and insecurity that comes with that. Understanding that like when you have the belief that your support or love from this creator is contingent on certain things, and then if those things aren't there, then your life is threatened. So you feel fear, and then you do behaviors to counteract that fear. Understand, like, their perception is that this is just reality, when what you really need to understand is that's your reality. It's your perception. It's what you are currently experiencing. It's not the overall reality. It's your reality. And one of the things I always ask people when they have experiencing OCD and anxiety loop, it's like, well, if other people believe in God, like, why don't they have to do all the same things you have to do? When it comes to scrupulosity subtype specifically. And this goes into anything, right? In order to have contamination, fears, you oftentimes need to subscribe to germ theory, right? And, and so on and so forth. And it's not that we're trying to rationalize our way out of this. It's understanding that when you can help someone navigate through an emotion and shift into an identity. So let's say the identity is, again, something to the effect of I'm not lovable, or I'm not okay the way I am, and the belief is I need to be these certain ways, and there's an insecure attachment at the very core of this. Well, getting the person to the place where they feel lovable and secure the way they are then lets them let go of a lot of the narrative of, well, I need these people to like me and them to think this way and this and this and this, and which drives a lot of the fear and compulsion to begin with. Now, identity and belief, you can't bypass the emotional work of actually learning how to confront fear emotionally and having to disengage with thought. But when it comes to like long-term healing, learning to shift and work on yourself from a belief and identity perspective is very powerful, because if you don't, you're oftentimes going to just still operate from certain identity patterns and certain belief patterns that are going to perpetuate fear, and the fear will latch on to a different theme, right? So, I thought that the Tyrion Lannister, narrative of like a Lannister always pays his debts, it just shows this idea that because he held this identity, because he maintained this belief, that the behavior followed suit. When you understand that compulsions are the things that we need to remove to not feed this loop, then you have to understand that there's certain identities and beliefs that are driving the compulsion to begin with. Whether it's I'm not supposed to feel these emotions, I'm not supposed to experience these thoughts, these emotions are too much for me, right? Whatever it is, it's like a lot of the beliefs drive the behavior to begin with. So working from a belief and identity construct is very transformative if you integrate it incorrectly to your recovery process. So if you're interested in learning more on that, I definitely would encourage you to check out TBC. We obviously dive into this very extensively with our clients, and so and this is really where some very very transformative steps can be made on your journey. So with that, wishing you guys a great week and a great day as always, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey there, thanks so much for watching that episode. If you found it helpful, we have some links to some other episodes that we think you might like as well. And if you're looking for help on your journey to recovery from fear, stress, and anxiety, either check out the links in the notes or head over to restoredminds.com. Thank you, and talk to you soon.